Welcome back to another episode of Dentistry's Growing with Grace podcast. Join Grace and her guest of the week as they discuss lessons learned in the industry and explore unique insights into ethical growth.
Hello and welcome back to Dentistry's Growing with Grace. I am very excited for my guest today. Brian, welcome.
Thank you. Hey, Grace. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. So tell our audience about you and what you do before we get into like the really hard questions.
Yeah. So sure. So I'm a managing director and executive coach with Fortune Management. And nationally, we are the largest practice management organization there is. We have coaches from Hawaii all the way to Boston. I concentrate on the Houston market and the Columbus, Ohio market. And so we're in the business of helping doctors, dentists, build the practice of their dreams. Whatever their vision is, we're going to help them get there. My background by training, academically, I'm an industrial organizational psychologist. So if you see Dr. Brian Passell, yeah, that's naturally. It's a lot of syllables that ended up with a PhD. But that's my background academically, which really prepared me to work with businesses, companies, organizations, focusing on how do you hire the right people? How do you build the right team? How do you develop them? How do you build the right strategy, learning and training and development, that whole kit and caboodle. My tie to the dental industry is very personal. I grew up the son of a periodontist. I like to say it's better than being a son of something else. I was very interested in what my dad did for business. His practice was in Phoenix, Arizona for 20 something years. And at the latter end of the last few years of his career, he partnered up with Fortune Management. He was actually a client of Fortune's and which led to great successes for him. I mean, it was amazing. It was transformational for him from going from a single provider, one periodontist, to having two associates, which he was then able to transition over to them and then live the life of his dreams, teaching, traveling, golfing, playing with his grandkids, the whole 9 yards. So awesome. That's kind of the long and short of it. And so here we are.
That's awesome. So I had this question from a client earlier today, Brian. He said, is now people, just to preface this, people contact me when they're wanting to grow, and sometimes when they need to grow, when they really need new business. So sometimes I talk to people and they're a little discouraged or they're not where they want to be. And he said, is everyone feeling like this right now? Like through this pandemic, is everybody really struggling with business? And so I said, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but no, they're not. I know of a lot of people who are surprisingly having a great, it even shocks me. I'm like, can you please like dial it back a little bit? But what have your experiences been with success in these times? And what would you say to someone asking you that?
Yeah. So of course, there's obviously going to be practices that are struggling now, but there's always been practices that have struggled. And my sense is, obviously I don't have any hard statistics on this, but from what I'm picking up on, the ones that are struggling probably were already unhealthy. They maybe didn't know it, but they were unhealthy going into the pandemic. Right. And so this is just, you kind of become more of what you are during a crisis. And so if you're unhealthy coming in, you become more unhealthy. But if you were healthy going in and strong, you become stronger. So, so there's definitely some that are going to be having a hard time for sure. And a lot of that has to do with the change in the environment combined with their culture of the office, the systems that they have or didn't have, and all of that. However, there are plenty that are thriving right now. Just, we look at crisis and some people go into panic mode, right? They kind of curl up into fetal position and just kind of wait for it to pass. But the reality is that in crisis, there's risk and opportunity, right? And so particularly the dentists that I'm working with are all doing quite well. Most of them are within 5 to 10% of production of last year, and that's having been shut down for 2 months this year. And some have actually exceeded past what they did last year, even after being shut down for 2 months. I've got at least one that she's my poster child for this. She's 40% over last year. And here's why. I say it's because these folks, they've leaned into it, right? They didn't pull back. We knew what they wanted to accomplish, and come end of February of 2020, all of our plans got thrown into the blender, and just chopped up. But what we didn't do was lose sight of what they wanted to accomplish, So
I'm
yeah,
going to say right now, I want to just kind of interrupt a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't always lean into this pandemic. I just want to say, for anyone listening who, like me, had their moments of,
Oh no.
oh no, is a nice way to say
Yeah.
it. So, something.
This is a family program. I'll keep it clean.
Yeah. I mean, I had my moments where, and I'm sure people can relate to this, where I was just trying to give as much as I could. And I was so emotionally concerned for the people around me, for their physical health, their mental health. My mind was not on making money or doing business. My mind, and I think a lot of people rightfully so, their minds were on staying healthy, protecting their team, even having a team to come back to.
So
some of these obstacles that were thrown at us. So I just don't want to make anyone feel like if they didn't lean in that they're doomed.
And they're not doomed. No, they're not, because you can lean in now. I mean, it's not over. And the truth is that idea of leaning in really means being proactive, right? Going after what it is that you want. And so that philosophy applies in the tough times and the good times. What happens in the good times, when things get, you're comfortable, you become stagnant, and then things start to slip away and you don't catch it in time, right? And you wake up one day and realize you're behind the times, you become a dinosaur, whatever it is. So when I say lean into it, it's really about just being proactive. So for example, a client of mine that is one of the doctors I'm working closely with, we had this idea of updating her technology. She was going to purchase CBCT and eventually in the coming year wanted to bring on an associate. Well, we still did all of that anyway. The equipment had arrived in January, finished being installed and up and running in February, and then they got shut down. But we kept it, right? We kept it going and kept training, and we used some of the downtime for the team to get trained on the equipment. Happened to be also during that time, a lovely, very talented, great fit to the team associate literally walked through the front door saying, "Here's my resume. I would like to live here and join your team."
Wow.
We said, "Let's go for it." And a few other decisions like that. The outcome of that was that when the doors did reopen, she had an entire new menu of services she could offer, keeping all sorts of new treatment under her roof. So what she was able to identify with her new technology, plus the talents that the new associate brought, which she was doing Invisalign and doing implants, and added a whole new to the repertoire, just grew. And all of a sudden, she's like, "This is that." She's actually told me, "This is what's made my practice grow during the pandemic, was that we added," and that lends itself to, and can go on a tangent, but talking about what you do with marketing and whatnot, you might hear this a lot. It's quite common when I meet with a dentist, ask them what they're working on, what they need, what's their most immediate need, and they'll say something as simple as, "Oh, I need more new patients," right? That's just the easy kind of default, I'm not saying you don't necessarily need new patients, you might, but what about looking at how to get more out of the patients that we already have, how to better serve the existent patients that we currently have, and which is exactly what we experienced with this growth right after the pandemic, was we can do now more, provide a better experience and better service for our existing patients, which then translates into increased
sometimes production. And these situations are always different, but sometimes, well, the two, internal and the external, they're so intimately connected. And when people have a problem with new patient flow, like to the point where they don't consistently have 5 new patients, like at that level under, and that might be their preference depending on their practice, but at that level, let's say they need 20 or 30, that's where they want to be, and they're at 5. Then you start to kind of peel back layers and go, okay, but why? Because yeah, your marketing isn't great. There's a ton of opportunity there, but
Yeah.
what are these other things that also need to be done?
Yeah.
And we don't, even as a marketing person, I don't ever want anyone just focused on new patients. Like
I was gonna
that's,
say, marketing's not just about getting new patients. I
yeah.
mean, you tell me, that's your wheelhouse. But I mean, there's internal marketing, external marketing. Patient or customer retention is tremendous.
Yep.
Keeping your patients in is so much more economical, right? It's
Yep.
costs you 4 times as much to acquire a new patient than it does to keep an existing patient. And as we say, everything is marketing. And so what are you doing to communicate with your patients? And that was really one of the keys to success for a lot of the dentists out there, when they were coming out of their shutdown period, was, I guess it would fall into that marketing bucket, marketing to their patients during that time. So which
Yeah.
was just basic fundamental communications, right? And maybe it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the fancy social media posts or Google ads or whatever, but it was putting out communication pieces, to their patients to keep them engaged, right? And
Yeah.
also communicating with their team. That's a whole other subject, keeping their team engaged during the shutdown. But yeah, I mean, marketing, everything's marketing. So,
Yeah.
when you
Absolutely.
talking to your patients, easing their fears, providing them information, letting them know that you're there for them is huge. It builds
Mm-hmm.
trust, and that's really part of why we do marketing.
Yeah, I think the people who did the best, who weathered this storm the best, they focused on retention of both their team and their patients. But if
100%.
for some reason they were unable to do that for whatever circumstance,
Yeah.
now they've got to look at this opportunity in acquisition. So just like, retention would have been key. Okay, we're past that point. What did
Yeah.
you lose and how are we going to rebuild if you're in that position? And the good news
Right.
is there are a lot of people who have been kind of displaced in their job
Yes.
place. So there's a lot of opportunity with recruiting talent.
Oh yeah,
And there's a lot
absolutely.
of opportunity with recruiting in terms of new patients as well.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I think that's absolutely right. So first of all, the pandemic has been going on for, I mean, how 10 months or so. There was only a 2 month or so shutdown, depending what market you're in, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, whatever it was. Um, None of that is long enough to say that patients on your books are inactive, right? They're still active patients. They're still yours. They still consider you to be their dentist. So let's get on it, right? I mean, the number one place that I always tell them to look for to get patients in the schedule are the existing patients. If we look at their numbers and you can say, hey, what percentage of your active patients are actually on the hygiene schedule? And it's usually, when I start, it's usually a lot lower than they imagine. I see that 30, 40, 50% of their active patients aren't even scheduled. So let's reach out to those folks, right? Let's start there. You're sitting on a gold mine. I mean, you can confirm this for me, but I've always said that, when you look at your active patients, their name, their phone number, their email address, their dental history, their insurance, their family members, yada, yada, et cetera, et cetera. That's a marketing gold mine, right? That's data. That's marketing
Yep.
data. So let's reach out to those folks and start there. And whatever that looks like, whether it's just straight up reactivation phone calls, it's email campaigns, Facebook campaigns, whatever it takes to re-engage those patients. That's where I would start, right? So if you kind of felt like you've been struggling through this, are you focusing on your existing patients?
I mean, relationships with patients, who would have thought? I mean, it just seems way too
Right.
simple to be effective. I have
Right.
people sometimes, and this is a bit of advice I'll just, give away for free because I think it's common sense, but it's really not. There are a lot of people I talk to that are transitioning into ownership. They're purchasing a practice.
Yeah.
And obviously, your biggest concern at that stage of the game is retention. You want to keep as
Yes.
many of those patients
Sure.
in as possible because as soon as they get that letter that's written to
Right.
really honor the legacy of the previous owner and then
Right.
briefly mention, I mean, I rewrite a lot of those letters. I'm sure you help with that too.
Yeah.
But once they get that letter, they're going, oh, I need a new dentist, and they're shopping on Google.
That's right.
Just like they shopped on Amazon for all their Christmas presents. They're out shopping for a new dentist. And one of the things I tell people is before, as we're building your website, as we're helping you with like the external piece, why don't you just call all the patients? They're
Just
like,
introduce yourself.
huh.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
always this like revolutionary idea that like,
Yeah.
they're like, well, what
Yeah.
do you mean call the patients? I'm like, just,
Big-
you pick up the
the
phone.
old phone, right?
This is
No,
for
100%. One of the most effective things we've ever, we've taught is the simplest. Even when they get whenever a new patient joins, I always, why don't you give, at the end of the week, give the doctor a list of those 5 or 10 patients that are coming in next week, and that doctor's objective, it takes 20 minutes. Just call them all. This day and age, most people don't even answer the phone, but that's okay. Like, how blown away would a new patient be to get a voicemail from the new dentist who's just saying, looking forward to seeing you next week. If you have any questions or concerns, give me a call. Otherwise, I'll see you on Tuesday. And those are little gems that just like go a long way. And same with existing patients. Give them a call. Maybe that new doctor, can just take a list, a short list every week, and just start working down that list at lunchtime and make a few phone calls. I mean, 100%. That would put them so far and above and beyond what the dentist down the street is doing. That's what it's about, being extraordinary, right? It's doing the things that other people won't, right? The tough, that look like tough things to do. It's not hard to do that. Like you're saying, it's just the telephone, pick it up,
Yeah. But it's uncomfortable because there's doubt and there's fear and there's questioning of everything. And especially when you're a new owner, and you and I both live the journey ourselves. When you're a new owner, you're going, what exactly do I say? Well, are they going to think I'm desperate? Well, are they going to think it's okay to call my cell all the time? Are they going to abuse this? Like your mind starts going with, okay, well,
it's
that's
fear.
a great idea.
It's fear.
But
it's fear, right? And just like so much, all of the things that fall onto the dentist's shoulders when they become a business owner, this was not talked about in dental school, and I'm pretty sure there was no class in school where they said, okay, and someday you're going to be making phone calls to your patients to welcome them to the practice, right? That's just not part of the syllabus. So there's this fear, and as an entrepreneur, and that's why I talk a lot about, to doctors, you need to be a leader. You need to have an entrepreneurial spirit and mindset. You're no longer a dentist. You're a business owner. What you deliver, right? You're performing dentistry. That's the service you offer. But you're a leader, and you have to think like a CEO and like a leader. And talk about inspiring your team, particularly in the example you gave of a young dentist taking over a practice. If that team sees you for an hour a day picking up the phone and calling patients to let them know you're the new dentist, like what will that say to your team, right? It's kind of the old, I'll never ask you to do something I wouldn't do myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes time to doing, working on your recare and reactivating patients and whatnot, and that will go a long way. When your team saw you called 1,000 people.
And
that's
where Brian, I think that your expertise is so helpful, because you're able to not just give them the little things that they could find on their own through podcasts, through Google searches, anyone can find how to do anything in today's day and age. It's
out there.
It's not just the knowledge that you get when you work with an advisor. It's so much more. And would you agree that like success comes from like all these little things lining up? It's not like one big thing.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can make 1% improvement every day, the compound effect of that is astronomical. And so, just like when you're working with your clients on marketing and I'm working on my clients with their practice management, probably the best thing that we can do for them is hold them accountable, right? I mean, I'm sure as a marketing expert and providing your service, you're constantly asking them for content information, and they need to do certain actions and activities on their end. Otherwise, you can't provide your service. Yeah.
So I don't. No, I don't.
Oh.
I don't. I know. I don't give
How
Dennis homework. I don't give Dennis homework. I don't. Because that's Brian, that's what you do. I don't give them homework. I just give them, I'll be like, here's your stuff. This is the one part of your practice. Once we understand your brand, you don't have to think about it. But I will tell you're right in the fact that I do have to kind of chase them down sometimes just to have their regular meetings with us.
That's what I'm talking about.
I want them to see their stats.
Because they have to.
results.
And you
I need
need
to
their
see what the results
approval,
are.
and they
Yeah.
have to give a stamp of approval on whatever you're putting out. And that's what I'm talking about. You're holding them accountable.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
so that, before I launch your new website, doctor, I need you to review this, to say it's
Yeah.
okay with you. I mean, that's accountability, and that's the ownership mentality too, right? They're
Yes.
not in the weeds doing it. I don't want them. I want them to
Right.
learn how to pass that off. I would prefer
I just
that.
didn't want to scare anyone, making them think I make them write content
No,
because.
no, 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 no. Yeah, I'm with you, and that's my mindset as well. To be honest,
Yeah.
my big goal for every dentist I work with is that I want them to build a team, build a culture, an environment where they have a high performing, self-managing team, right? So they
Mhm.
can pull back from being in the weeds, from micromanaging, and just having to be down in there. Not that there's anything wrong with that work, but that's not where they're adding the most value. Right.
Mhm.
So, and that slows things down and they become the bottleneck. And
Yeah.
so if we can get them to that level, the team will drive the business for them, right? They'll lead, they'll have to set the vision and say, hey, this is where we want to go. This is what we want to become. This is what we value, right? This is who I want us to be.
Mhm.
But that team's going to be there building the relationships with patients, improving the systems, making sure they're hitting their goals, making sure they're producing content for their marketing or following up with the whoever
It's
it's happened.
I don't know how they do it. It's got to be so challenging to be the clinical provider and have this leadership positive,
Yeah.
this fortitude to really carry the practice. I just have so much respect
Oh,
for.
absolutely. It's a unique industry in that sense, right? Where where you have such a highly the leader, the owner of the business is extraordinarily high level training, technically, degreed and educated. They're also the main provider, producer of the business, and also they're leading and running the business and responsible for everybody and everything that goes on within there. And that's rare that you see that. And so that's where I think is a challenge to them coming in, particularly younger doctors that haven't seen it before. How do I wear those different hats and stay on top of all of it? It's overwhelmed. I hear it constantly from these dentists, particularly the ones that are doing well, meaning they're getting busy, they're producing, collecting, they're hitting goals and all that. If they hit their stride in that regards early on, they start to get overwhelmed because they're not able to pay attention to the other things that need to happen in the business. And then they kind of have this, I wouldn't call it an epiphany. It's just a shock one day, just like, I didn't know I needed to take care of that. Or they go meet with their CPA and they're like, they
Yes.
find something's out of whack. Like, what happened with our payroll? What happened with paying our taxes? What happened with this? And that's okay. I call it a quality problem. If you're $1 million practice, but you didn't know that you should have been processing claims in this way or that way. Nope, we can fix that up. But we got to walk
Yeah.
it back and get some clarity, bring down that fear factor. The anxiety needs to come down. And
It is like a light bulb, though. Once you embrace what your most important role is, which
yeah,
is that leadership aspect, that management and leadership aspect, both, you can't go back. You don't go back from that. Like
right.
once you realize it, you're a different leader. You're just a
Well,
different person.
Grace, before we started recording this, you even said to me, "Oh, my team helped set me up so well for these meetings," right? That's what we're talking about, right? Your team needs to be able to prepare you for every day so that you can be as the most successful you can be. And that's your success is their success as well. So that's,
Mhm.
we have to teach that. And it's a learning curve. And coming back full circle to your original question, those doctors that picked up on that, those are the ones that are doing really well right now. Right.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely. Well, if
they
someone
trust the team. Oh, good.
Yeah, if someone feels like, okay, this pandemic, I'm kind of sick of it. Kind of sick of using it as my excuse to not be focused on my business. I'm ready to improve. I'm ready to grow.
Yeah.
How can they expect, like, is there something you can offer them, like an introductory call, or how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite thing to do is just to have a free, not no obligation, just some time on the phone for a good 30-minute coaching session, and we can get kind of the baseline and see where you're at, where your challenges are, what you want to accomplish really is the most important question, short term and long term. And then, just see what would be the best next step for you. Coaching, I think everybody benefits from coaching. I know I have a coach, right? Most successful business owners that I know have been coached. And so, but it has to be a good fit, right? So not everybody's meant to work with me, and that's okay, right? So we'll have a 30-minute call and, see what we can figure out would be great for you, right? My intent for that call is just to come at the end of it with the doctor walking away 2, 3, or 4, key action items that they can take back into their office and just make it that much better for them. So really, yeah, just let's get on the phone and or we'll do a Zoom and we'll make it
awesome.
Just a coaching call. Yeah.
Awesome. And what's your email address for those who are listening?
Sure.
Not
so
reading.
it's my full name, Brian with an I, Passell. That's Passell. So it's Brian Passell at Fortune MGMT. So Fortune like the cookie, fortunemgmt.com. That's the easiest way to send me a note, and we'll make it easy from there.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for being with me today and for sharing this awesome information. And thank you to our audience who tunes in and listens to our content. I hope that you got some important, useful, I know you got some nuggets today. I definitely know you got some nuggets today of information. And follow us on our podcast, Dentistry is Growing with Grace, and join our Facebook group. And have a great day.